Did you forget? My unpleasant looks and history of nothing but bad luck sums up my life. I was set up by a colleague and got demoted, and my newlywed wife ran away from me too. The one laughing at my situation is my attractive boss at this new demoted post. Frozen like a deer in headlights, she whispered to me. It was my first time. Confused by her unexpected words, I was. My name is Timothy Sullivan. I'm 28 years old. I work at an event planning company. I just got married actually, and I am no longer a single man. With that new resolve, I thought I had my act together. But then, an unbelievable incident occurred. Who ordered the champagne for tomorrow's event? We don't have enough. Aren't you misspelling the digit? My boss's roaring voice echoes across the floor. Speaking of tomorrow's event, it's one I'm in charge of. It's an event to enjoy champagne and wine at a park in the city. I was the sub-leader for that event. Let me check the order form. As I rushed towards my boss, he frowned at me. He has a hard time dealing with me. It's often said that appearance matters for 80% of first impressions. Unfortunately, I was born with a rather menacing look. Apparently, people always seem to think I look angry. To add to that, I grew taller than one would prefer. My boss finds me intimidating due to my imposing presence. And now, I was approaching to him with a desperate form. For a moment, my boss seemed ready to bolt. There was my signature on the order form. But I didn't check this document before. Initially, I was removed from ordering the champagne. I was at a loss for words. One of my seniors on the team, smirking, called out to me, "You messed up big time, didn't you? What are you going to do?" Despite the critical situation, he was grinning from ear to ear. That's when it hit me. I remembered that the person in charge of ordering was my senior. My senior and boss began to whisper amongst themselves. This was not a good sign. My senior is likable and had good standing with our boss. My boss sees me differently than others as he dislikes me. I checked with Robert. "Timothy, it's your mistake after all." My boss, face red with anger, grabbed my collar. It was to be expected. This was the biggest event of the season. It's not me. I was removed from the wine team. No one cared to listen to my words. Robert kept smirking, looking at me. If he has time to laugh, he should do something. The event is tomorrow, so I decided to start calling all the wholesale liquor companies. No matter how much I say it's not my fault, everything will be blamed on me. I almost let out a sigh, but there was no time for that. I had to do as much as I could in the limited time. By the early morning of the event, all the champagne had arrived. I truly believe it was a miracle. A manufacturer I had a good relationship with had inquired to liquor companies outside the town for me. People who understand, understand. This phrase, which I have been repeating since my college days, I murmured like a mantra in my mind. Exhausted and dozing off at my desk, I could sense my colleagues coming in one after another. Everyone was amazed to see the delivered champagne. In my drowsy state, I heard Robert's voice. "If I handle it, it's as easy as this. I can fix the stupid mistakes of my juniors overnight." He must not have noticed me, dozing off, face down. He talked proudly, as if he had solved everything by himself. My colleagues also expressed their admiration, as expected. With his charming looks, eloquent speech, and pleasant demeanor, I thought again that Robert was indeed successful in life. Are you sleeping while Robert is working hard? Suddenly, I was pulled by the back of my neck and jolted awake. My boss was holding my collar, his face distorted with anger. I was immediately taken to the director's office. Apparently, I was going to be held accountable for this oversight. I felt thoroughly annoyed looking at the smug face of Robert in the corner of my eye. Demotion. What was communicated to me in the director's office was a transfer to a rural branch. In other words, a demotion. But I just got married. This is troublesome. My voice came out involuntarily. I've only been married for 6 months, and my wife is working too. She would also be troubled by a sudden transfer. Do I look like I care about your personal problems? Reflect on the harm you were about to cause the company at your new location. Fix that attitude too. My boss was now calling the new location by demotion openly. A transfer order was thrown at me. The destination was a small branch in a seaside town. I've been demoted from my sub-leader position as well. My salary will likely decrease accordingly. After leaving the director's office, I immediately sent a message to my wife. I didn't have the courage to tell her directly. However, she didn't reply immediately. A week after that incident, I found myself in the town of my demotion. It was near the sea, with the scent of the tide in the air. In the end, my wife left me. Just 6 months into our marriage, she made it clear to me when I got demoted. She couldn't quit her job, and she married me because I was earning well. It seems I'm no longer needed, as I've lost that value. I heard later that she had been involved with someone else before our marriage. My demotion was a convenient excuse for her to leave. You never know what life will throw at you. And now, at this new workplace, I have to start from scratch. The first time I showed up at work, everyone looked at me as if they were terrified. A towering man of 6'7", with a harsh gaze just sluggishly appeared. I knew their reaction was justified, but it still hurt. I may look intimidating, but I'm not one for fights. I can't boast about my strength, and I hate conflicts. Apparently, I seem cold to others, and they tend to keep their distance from me. This has been the case since my student days, and it hasn't changed since I started working. Those who get to know me well trust me, but few people make it that far. The new office clerk is a young girl, and she seems to be constantly scared of me. My other colleagues also treat me like I'm a delicate, touchy subject. There was only one person who treated me without any discrimination. That was the branch manager, Miss Lisa Richardson. She was an astonishingly beautiful woman. I was so stunned at first that I just stared at her. She always has her long hair loosely tied up and wore heels. Her lipstick was always red. She looked both pure and strong. 2 beauty spots lined up under her left eye, and when she smiled, her eyes narrowed in a way that was really charming. On top of that, she was a perfect beauty who was great at her job. She was particularly kind to me. I'm not being conceited. She really was especially kind to me. If I was eating alone, she would always invite me into the lunch group. If I was quiet, she would bring up various topics, trying to bridge the gap between me and the other colleagues. With her help, I quickly adapted to the workplace. It became more comfortable for me than the main office. People are not as they appear, she would tell our co-workers and people in the community while introducing me. In this rural setting, it's essential to build relationships with the local residents. From small to large events, our company seemed to handle almost all of them. And the office clerk told me that every group we worked with became a regular customer. Recently, I've even received fish from a local lady or dishes for dinner. In return, I get asked to do various things, like cleaning high places or changing light bulbs. For the summer dance festival, we're counting on you to take the lead, Timothy. Lisa said to me once I'd really settled into the local community. It appears to be conducted in collaboration with local elementary schools and community associations. I would probably be interacting with even more people than I am now. I wondered, can I really handle such a crucial role? I wondered if I could handle such an important role. I'm anxious about making a bad impression on people I meet for the first time. I don't want to put my coworkers, who have been so kind to me, in a tough spot. It was those colleagues who encouraged me when I was unable to respond right away. It's all right, we've got your back, they all reassured me. I had never been treated so gently before, and I almost found myself tearing up. It's all thanks to Lisa. When I look at her, she's perched irreverently on a desk, legs crossed, smiling. The heel caught on her toes, swaying, left a strong impression. Lisa usually appears prim and proper, but sometimes odd gaps in her character show. She can be surprisingly rough around the edges, or use crude language. Even though low heels would make her work easier, she always wears high stilettos. But these heels look cooler, don't they? That was a response when I asked why, and it somehow felt familiar, but I couldn't recall where I heard it before. As the day of the dance festival was around, the office began to bustle. One day, a local police officer from the substation attached to the office dropped by. He was deeply engrossed in a conversation with Lisa. Overhearing their discussion, it seemed there was some suspicious people around recently. There was an incident where a grade scholar was approached by a man with a sinister look, who tried to get the child into his car. As soon as I heard sinister look, I knew I was the one under suspicion. Lately, I've been helping local elementary school kids build floats for the parade. Apparently, some of the parents have named me as the unsavory-looking man. Just as I was sighing in exasperation, a man burst into the office with a force that seemed to kick the front door open. He was the president of the elementary school's parent-teacher association. As soon as he spotted me, he approached. You're preying on the children under the pretense of preparing for the dance festival. You're the worst person. He yelled at me and grabbed my collar. It seems his daughter got hurt. She had a scraped knee yesterday. He was treating me like a complete pervert. He continued to berate me for being ill-natured, unfriendly, and unmarried. I had nothing to say to him. Arguing back in situations like this is futile. I decided to stay silent. Officer, if you're here, arrest this man immediately. The president twisted my arm and tried to thrust me at the officer in the back. With such a strong force twisting my arm, I couldn't help but let out a cry of, "Ouch!" In an instant, the president's hand was knocked away with a great force. The one who knocked it away was Lisa. While glaring at the president, she tried to hide me behind her back. There was a height difference between us, so I was not hidden at all. "What do you think you're doing to my subordinate? Stop making unfounded accusations without any evidence." The firmness and conviction in Lisa's words seemed to overwhelm the president. At the time his daughter was supposedly harmed, I was at the float-making site, surrounded by a bunch of kids. Lisa and other colleagues were at the site too. Even so, this man with his criminal-looking appearance. The president kept ranting despite the odds turning against him, making Lisa lose his cool. I believe judging people by their looks is questionable. Just then, from the entrance of the municipal office, we could hear the children's voices saying, "That's right. It's not right." It seemed they were worried about me not showing up for the float-making time and came to the office to fetch me. The children explained my innocence to the president in earnest and started crying, asking him not to bully me. At this, even the president seemed utterly perplexed and scratched his head. "I'm sorry, I lost my cool." He immediately bowed his head and apologized to me. The children looked up at me. I gave them a reassuring smile and said, "It's okay." They seemed relieved, stopped crying, and started to smile. We made up. They seemed happy. That evening, the real culprit was quickly arrested. The culprit was a young man from the next town over who bore a striking resemblance to me. "Why did you stand up for me? I could have been the criminal, you know." When we were left alone due to overtime work, I asked Lisa. I appreciated that she believed in me, but there was a feeling that she understood everything about me that was deeply intriguing. What did she know about me? I wondered. Maybe she was a bit inclined to pick a fight. Suddenly being faced with my baseless accusation, Lisa stared at me, dumbfounded. Then, she broke into a gentle smile. With her heels clicking, she made her way over and stood next to my desk. "Did you really forget about me?" She leaned in and whispered, causing my heart to race. Lisa reached out and propped up my chin. She looked straight into my eyes. It was my first time. "Will you remember if I do this?" Slowly, her hands reached out towards my petrified face. Instinctively, I squeezed my eyes shut. The next moment, my cheeks were being pulled with an unbelievable force. What are you doing?" My words were distorted as my cheeks were being pulled from both sides. Lisa chuckled. "Come on, remember it." As she said this, she extended her hand in front of me. A large silver ring was on a finger that was usually bare. The moment I saw it, my memory center kicked into high gear. "This ring." "What, this ring? It's the one I gave you, right?" Lisa watched me, grinning at my surprise. This ring was my first gift for a girl. When I was still in middle school, I frequently visited a bookstore where a girl worked. Though I say girl, she must have already been in college. The first time I saw her in the bookstore, I was surprised by how beautiful she was. While I was frequenting the bookstore just to see her, I noticed she was being avoided by the other employees. Perhaps I noticed it because I was facing similar isolation at school. When I listened to the conversations between the employees, it seemed the reason was simply because she was beautiful. Just petty jealousy among women. Short black hair and multiple piercings. Her nails were always painted black. Apparently, they didn't like her style. I thought about how tough it all must be for her. One day, Right before closing, I really wanted to read a book, so I dashed into the bookstore. In the corner of the nearly closed shop, she was crouched down looking for something. Are you looking for something? I mustered up my courage and spoke to her, which seemed to surprise her as she stood up. Her eyes, filled with tears as she looked at me, are an image I still remember. It made my heart pound. I lost my ring. Indeed, the silver ring she usually wore was missing from her finger. She told me it was a gift from her brother. There was no one else in the store. Silently, I crouched down on the floor and started to help her look for it. In the end, we didn't find the ring. She bowed her head to me and thanked me. I was frustrated that we couldn't find it, but I was happy to have shared that time with her. The next day, when I went to the bookstore, she was not there, and the usual group that spoke ill of her was. I was speechless at what the leader of the group was loudly boasting about. She was proudly talking about how she had thrown the girl's silver ring into the river. Apparently, the leader's boyfriend fell for the girl and that was the cause. Talk about spiteful. Feeling sorry for her after she searched so hard, I spent all my savings and bought a ring for the first time in my life. Later, when she was at the cash register, I slipped the ring onto her finger in the midst of the chaos. I clearly remember that I was so flustered that I put it on her left ring finger. Her surprised face with wide eyes, and the face of Lisa, who is laughing in front of me now, overlap in my memory. You were the first one to put a ring on my left ring finger, Timothy. Lisa apparently noticed me at the company induction ceremony. She found out my department, my name, and while she thought of speaking to me someday, many years passed by. When it was decided that I was to be transferred here, she was so delighted that she even danced a little jig. No way. I became somewhat embarrassed and couldn't look at Lisa's face. But one thing became clear to me. Having been judged based on my appearance and feeling hurt by it, I realized that she understood my feelings. She had been sympathizing with me all along. So, is this ring valid? Or was it just a coincidence? Lisa tells me that after that, I became too embarrassed to go to the bookstore, but she had been waiting for me all along. I was surprised when you crawled around on the floor so earnestly looking for the ring for her. Ever since then, I've been concerned about you. I couldn't recognize Lisa, who had a completely different atmosphere from her student days. But talking like this, she hasn't changed at all from that time. Of course, it's valid. Lisa grinned satisfactorily at my response. I guess I won't be able to win against her, but I feel like we can be together forever because we understand the same kind of pain. Next time, I'll propose with a proper ring. I make the declaration while shyly looking away. Lisa bursts into laughter and says, "I'm looking forward to it." What did you think of that? Subscribing the channel would be a great motivation for me to create more content. See you in the next video.